might as well start with a home run derby, I guess, to kind of reverse chronological. We had
Yeah, let's
a
do it.
former Lugnut, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., joins his father as the first father-son combination to ever win a home run derby, which I think is really fucking cool.
The Derby.
I kind of had a rooting interest just because he's a former Lugnut, of course, and I continue to work for the Lugnuts after the last 15 years. So I've got a little tie there. Of course, we had the local tie with Luis Robert Jr., another junior, looking pretty good in the first round. I
Oh
thought he
my
might go pretty
God,
far.
ferocious.
Yeah, and then things kind of tailed off there in the second round.
Yeah, I feel like the pitching got for a lot of hitters, like their pitchers got worse in the second
Yeah,
round. And he wanted the ball like kind of inside and low. And I'm trying to think. There was another hitter who had the same issue.
Pete Alonso. He
Yeah,
had a
Alonzo, right.
terrible
Yeah,
bat thrown to him.
guy was terrible. He kept
Kept
throwing them
throwing.
outside him.
Yeah, so he was hitting like opposite field line drives. Like we'll throw
Yeah,
it up and in, and he'll knock it out. But that was
yeah.
apparently not so easy.
But I mean, Robert had to get to 29 to or 28 to advance, and at one point in regular time, it was looking like, oh, he's not doing so great. Then he goes on this tear for the after the pause, after the timeout, because he was at like I think he was at like 11 home runs going in the timeout, and he ended at 27 in a tie within regulation, and just had to hit one
Yep,
and he got the full minute because he's the owner. He did win one thing. He's got the longest home run of the night at
that's right.
485 feet. But yeah, the second round was just he's hitting like low line drives and shit.
Yeah, he
So
looked gassed, but it was revealed later that he felt some tightness in what was his right calf, left calf.
well, I mean, you can't escape an injury.
I mean, I think you predicted it, in fact, in the last
I mean,
episode, or at least
I,
something along the lines of the Bobby Abreu curse.
yes, yes, it's everywhere. It's always there, even though it's really only happened to Bobby Abreu. But it's
And
always looming.
potentially now Luis Robert Jr. Although he's said to be playing on Friday, first game back. Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So hopefully everything's okay. But it's like when I saw that news come across yesterday, it's like, oh, of course it could only happen to the one
Yeah,
White Sox in the All-Star game.
I know. Doesn't even play in the game then.
That was another brutal part. Not a whole lot of representation for our five clubs. Actually, mainly Giants. I saw Alex Cobb had a solid inning. He did walk
Yes,
Otani, which is nothing to be ashamed of. I saw was it Doval
the
came
winner.
came in later, throwing 102-mile-an-hour heat, looking crazy dominant in the All Star game. That was pretty impressive. Justin Steele for the Cubs had a solid inning.
He
Michael
surely did.
Lorenzen from the Detroit Tigers even made an appearance. Which did we talk about this last show? How
No.
he got called to, or basically told by AJ Hinch, got called into his office to get the news that he was going to be an All Star. But Michael Lorenzen, the idea that he was going to be an All Star would never even entered his mind. He thought he was getting called into AJ's office to because he was getting traded. Got called into his office, got told he was going to the All Star game. He's like, dude, I'm a mid four, referring to his mid four ERA. He's like, why am I going to the All Star game? How is this possible? So, but he was, of course, happy to be there. And actually, I was kind of cringing when he came in. It was kind of an awkward situation. We got called in after a long delay for they're checking a replay on a home run, whether it was fair or foul. Ended up being foul, but the pitcher who threw it from the Blue Jays, I forget who it actually was, but he ended up like hurting his back, and so Lorenzen got called in to finish the at bat and finish the inning, which he gave up a dribbler that it should have been an error on Rutschman throwing to first, but they called it an infield hit, which I thought was bullshit. Then he walked the next batter, so I could just see things imploding for a dude that didn't even feel like he was worthy to be there. But he ended up
Right.
getting out of the inning, getting out of the crisis. Worked out well. I was happy for him. Tigers were well represented by Michael Lorenzen, believe it or not. National League won their first in like 10 years, 11 years. I I thought that was kind of crazy. I didn't realize it was that record. I guess I'm not quite as provincial about National League and American League as I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are, but I didn't really keep track of those records as much. I guess I did when it used to count for the World Series home field advantage a lot more, but
Yeah. It's been since 2012. Crazy stat. The aforementioned Duvall was the winner of the All-Star
oh, you
game.
got the W. Okay.
Yeah, and the last time the National League won an All-Star game, a Giants pitcher was also the winner that night. Matt Cain in 2012 pitched 2 scoreless innings to get the win.
That's
So,
a good year in general for you guys.
yeah, well, that means it's going to happen now. Not
All
really,
right.
but
Yeah, that's a little bit different situation, but we'll get there eventually.
yeah.
Any thoughts about the home run derby or All-Star game before
Uh,
we
home run derby. I don't know. I used to get so into it, but I don't feel like anyone's doing. I mean, maybe if Otani was in it,
that would have been awesome.
it would have
Yeah.
been crazy. But even Roberts' 485-foot home run, I just feel like the coverage was shitty.
Yeah,
Like
I thought the
you didn't even know he hit a 485-foot home run until they were like, "Oh, Lewis Robert has the longest home run of the night at 485 feet." And then when they showed the replay of it, you couldn't really even tell how like majestic it was,
yeah,
or
it was weird. It was hard to see home run balls in general, even in the All-Star, especially in the All-Star game, that the time of day or whatever. It was very early there. It was only like 5 o'clock, I think,
right.
in Seattle. So that kind of messed with the visual. But I thought the graphics were kind of fucked up in the broadcast for the at least for the well, for both, but for the home run derby, it was hard to figure out what was going on. Well, mainly the All-Star game. We'll get to that in a second, but yeah, I think they just had a lot of strange issues. I felt like Luis Robert was kind of overlooked in general. They didn't have a whole lot to say about him. They were kind of showing how he was milling around between his rounds, like no one was talking to him, like he didn't have any friends there. So it was kind of just a weird way they portrayed him, I thought. But
Yeah.
All-Star game, kind of a strange broadcast. It's I always take pride in the Mid Michigan broadcast booth with John Smoltz, being from Waverly, Michigan, which is part of Lansing, right here in West Lansing,
West Lansing.
about 2 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. And then, of course, Joe Davis from Potterville, on the west side of Lansing. Kind of amazing that the two guys broadcasting the All-Star game and eventually the World Series again.
Potterville's real?
Yeah,
I was only in a movie.
you've done this joke before, actually. It's Pottersville it's in real life.
Oh,
And you
okay.
had the same reaction when I told you again. Oh, I'll edit
Yeah.
this. I'll splice these together so you know exactly that you keep telling the same goddamn joke. But they did a good job of like interviewing players on the field, which is a cool thing they can do for All-Star games. I don't mind it in exhibition games like this. It kind of drives me crazy when they do it in real competitive games where they mic up
Yeah.
the outfielder. They actually mic'd up the pitcher one time, which I thought was great because you got his thoughts like right after he threw a pitch, whether he liked it or what he did wrong or what was going through his head, which I thought was cool. The most awkward parts, of course, is when they bring in chatbot A-Rod, who feels like he's just an amalgamation of artificial intelligence taking like whatever baseball cliches and just mushing them together and saying whatever. The palpable tension between he and Jeter just cracks me up too. And then interspliced with Big Papi just confidently saying inane comments, thinking they're jokes, and just equally confidently laughing at his own jokes. Just makes me laugh. But they stayed on those guys for like a full inning where all they could talk about was the weather and the popcorn they were eating. It's just like, why are we doing this?
Right, exactly.
Word Hole Media.